Private Charles Plumpick, ornithography specialist, communications platoon, headquarters company reporting, sir.
Splendid. Pumpernickel.
Plumpick, sir.
Nickel, splendid. Good of you to volunteer. Brave lad. Stand at ease. Out. Yes. I suppose you can read a map. Your mission is quite simple. Get into the town. You do speak French?
Oui, sir.
Je aussi.
Make contact with the local spies. Town barber heads it. Find the explosives, disarm the fuse. Shouldn't take you long. What?
No, sir. Yes, sir. But I wonder, sir, if you have the right Plumpick, sir. You see, I'm an ornithography specialist.
This call for a specialist. Pumpernickel.
Plumpick.
Nickel, you think we pick your name out of a hat? How good is your French?
Quite good, sir. But you see, it's the explosives, sir. I wonder, sir, if perhaps one of the chaps from Ordnance may not do the job just a wee bit better, sir.
Send 2 men in that inferno? See here, man. That town can go up at any moment. You're asking me to risk the life of 2 of my troops? Why, blast it all. The life of every one of those men out there is dear to me than my own.
The men are aware of that, sir, and we do appreciate it, sir.
That is leadership, lad.
Yes, sir. But about the explosives, sir.
That will do, Pumpernickel. Did you, Nickel? Did you not volunteer?
Well, as a matter of fact, sir...
Then, good. Let's go down with it. You have no time to lose. The town can go out at any moment. Let's not forget it. Oh.
I don't think, sir, that I could forget that if I tried, sir.
Well, let's get cracking, lad. Oh, by the way, the password for your contact with the barber salons, all that is... Le Merlin aime la friture. Oh, see, if you can find it, what the devil they mean by le lance-quenette frappe à minuit? French are so wordy. Any question?
No, sir.
Good.
But I wonder, sir, if you do have the right Plumpick, sir. You see, about the explosives.
A scene with both Adolfo Celli and the great Alan Bates from one of the true cult classics of all time, The King of Hearts. Opening up our program tonight on Public Radio KCBX. It's all about movies. The show is Take Two. And across from me on the aisle, or perhaps are we in the balcony tonight? It's the king of cinema, Bob Whiteford.
And across the partition from me, the incomparable, the one and only Gentleman Jim Dee, the czar of film on the Central Coast. Jimmy, what a great scene to kick off the show. Alan Bates and Adolfo Celli from the 1966 cult classic King of Hearts.
And Alan Bates is the subject of our program tonight, who, if you didn't know, unfortunately we lost about 2 weeks ago. Alan Bates succumbed to cancer at the age of 69. And we devote the show to Alan Bates, and what a career. I've said it before, I've said it again, Bob, when we give tributes to certain actors, writers, directors, we delve into the career, we look into the filmographies, and it's always a jaw-dropper in the fact that Alan Bates, all that he was involved in, 78 films, a couple haven't even been released yet. He was still working right up to his demise. And a great actor who worked not only in film, but also in the stage and on television.
This is just an incredible body of work here. In talking about Alan Bates, it's almost like you go back to his very first film, 1960's The Entertainer. And it was a great film, a tour de force for Laurence Olivier, directed by Tony Richardson. Probably one of the great gems of the British kitchen sink realism school of movies. And here he is. It was also Albert Finney's debut film. And it's quite striking. I mean, Bates, from his first film on, made an impression. This man was a great actor, classically trained stage actor. He worked with the likes of John Osborne. In fact, back in 1960, he was playing the Look Back in Anger on the stage, which, as we know, was a film version with Richard Burton, which was absolutely incredible. But Bates apparently was doing the part on the stage in London, and that led to opening some doors for his film career. Bates, powerful actor, kind of funny and good-natured, but there's something ready to explode, and you just don't know when it's going to come.
Yeah, I agree, Bob. In looking at a number of his films over the last few days, he has such a handsome man, but he seems to have a subdued side to him. I mean, for instance, in King of Hearts, he does bounce between, sort of a bumbling guy to rather a lover of Geneviève Bujold. And then he's capable of keeping this rather straight demeanor, but there's a menace involved. I mean, in a number of the roles that we'll talk about, he could do it all, and somehow. Well, you use the word powerful. He could just keep that demeanor, but you felt the power. Whether it's in he starred with Mel Gibson in Hamlet about 10 years ago, Alan Bates horror film that we're going to play a clip from later on called The Shout, that is really very eccentric, a very interesting film. And here's this rather quiet guy capable of these incredible things. So he was. Quite an actor, and we should add, it is Sir Alan Bates.
Absolutely, Jimmy, Sir Alan Bates. We here at Take Two acknowledge knighthoods. We don't send our MBEs back. What's interesting too, Jim, is he played gay characters, and he did them in a really kind of well-rounded, non-stereotypical way. He was one of the first actors. I hearken back to a few weeks ago, we were talking about David Hemmings and how he played that gay character in The Love Machine, and Bates took on the gay role in such films as Butley, which was an adaptation of his stage hit.
It came out in 1976.
And he played that with it's so intense. Watching him, he's married, but he's got a male lover, and who also shares an office with him in the university. And it's such a complex part, and how he does it's incredible to watch. It's so powerful. I don't think I could ever watch that film again.
Oh, I may have to watch it, and I'll check in.
It's amazing. And he also played Guy Burgess in the 1982 made-for-television film. I think we mentioned this with our spy movie show, and it was called An Englishman Abroad. And what he does is he plays the infamous British double agent Guy Burgess, who was a real gadfly, a flamboyant, openly gay man back in the 40s and 50s. And this film takes place somewhat later in the 60s, early 70s, many years after Burgess went into exile and was living in Moscow, and he struck up a relationship with the actress, friendship, with the British actress Coral Brown, who played herself in this film. It's only like 65 minutes long, and it was amazing because Bates really, he grasps this, I don't know what you would call it. Burgess, for all his spying, he's damaged the British government badly. He's destroyed their intelligence service along with Kim Philby. Yet he's still an Englishman. Mm-hmm. He still has his Savile Row tailor. He still wears his old school tie that's rather threadbare. And he's very wonderfully melancholy, as only an Englishman abroad can be. He's still an Englishman abroad. And it's a marvelous little film, and it's a tour de force for Alan Bates in a very subtle way. Mm-hmm. What's missing from this film is that kind of volcanic outburst. It's not there. And it shows that he could master the subtleties of a very complex character and do it well.
in looking at numerous films, Bob, I was also noting that all these things do come out in an effortless fashion. This is a guy who who just feels like he's not acting, and that struck me in film after film when I was getting the clips today. I just said, this guy is comfortable in whatever role he takes. He just seems to inhabit it, and even though there's Alan Bates, I mean, he's completely enveloped in the role, but there's a calm about it, like you said, how it's very complex, and yet, you know, it's still waters run deep sort of thing. Some facts about Alan Bates: he was born 1934, February 17th in Derbyshire, England, and he was married to his wife, Victoria, from 1970 to 1992, and she did pass away, and he had twin sons. And let's go back to that early part of his career, Bob. I mean, you mentioned that his very first film goes back to 1960, called The Entertainer. The year later, he was in a film that I saw in the theaters when it came out, mainly because I was madly in love with Haley Mills.
And
at
who
the
wasn't,
time. I must
Jimmy?
have been 8 or 9. And I saw a film called Whistle Down the Wind. It had an impact on me, and again, it was great to get a clip from it, to watch it again, and you know, Bob, maybe we need to do a show on the fact that the British seem to have the edge on films that bring up religious topics, spiritual topics, topics of Christianity, and are able to make comments through interesting stories. And here's a case in point: Whistle Down the Wind, an innocent, childlike viewpoint of a man who ends up in a farmhouse, in a farm barn, and the children thinks that he is Jesus Christ. And in fact, he is a murderer on the lam.
run.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the children embrace him. They find this stranger, this bearded man who looks rather Christ-like in this barn. And Haley Mills, who's sort of the older of the children, brings the children together, and they bring, you know, they discover him, and they think that he is the returned Jesus Christ, and they take it completely seriously. The film is wonderful in a almost fairy tale, childlike way, and yet there's a real depth, and there's a real interesting twist on the story, and I loved watching it again, getting these clips.
Boy, that Whistle Down the Wind, that film, boy, try saying that 4 times fast. But I think that was directed by Brian Forbes. That might have been his first picture that he directed. And he went on to do such things as Seance on a Wet Afternoon with Richard Attenborough and Kim Stanley. I also believe he did that classic horror terror film, And Soon the Darkness, with Pamela Franklin, that came out in 1970, I believe. Great filmmaker in his own right. And again, you see that Bates working with a lot of the top talent. This is a great film, and it's a lot of fun, and it's very interesting. And we were talking about this film earlier, Jim. It's like, this is the kind of movie the British do really well.
Well, a case in point, you can bring up Whistle Down the Wind. You can bring up Bedazzled, even.
Oh, sure.
Brimstone and Treacle with Sting, The Ruling Class, and all get into these interesting religious themes while commenting, and of course maybe poking a little fun, but daring by doing it. And let's play this clip from Whistle Down the Wind. Here is Haley Mills talking to Alan Bates, who's pretty oblivious about what's happening. He's on the lam. He's a murderer. Haley Mills believes him to be Jesus Christ. The picture that he gives, or that she gives to him, is a picture that she got from her Bible. Here's from Whistle Down the Wind.
It's all right. You can come out now. They've gone. You all right?
Yeah, it's okay.
We'll have to find you somewhere safer.
Thanks for not giving me away.
Oh, we wouldn't ever give you away. Not ever.
Why are you and all them other kids, why are you helping me?
Because we love you. Oh, I forgot. I brought you this.
What is it?
It's a picture of you. Of course, it was taken a long time ago. Oh, and don't worry about the other thing. We won't let the grown-ups find you. You're quite safe with us. Quite safe with us.
That's Haley Mills talking to Alan Bates in Whistle Down the Wind. Haley Mills thinking that he is Jesus Christ returned to the earth.
And for all we know, he may have been.
Well, it's a marvelous picture. I just that wave of films, even though you were talking, Bob, about that kitchen sink quality of British films, there's a slate of films that came out of Britain in the 50s and 60s, black and white, but they just have a certain quality about them. I mean, I'll lump everything, the Elstree studios, the comedies, well, we're going to talk about Georgie Girl, another hit that starred Alan Bates, in almost like a, shall we call it an Austin Powers, hip swinging London kind of film.
Absolutely. You know, Georgie Girl is such a gas, and for so many reasons. I mean, Lynn Redgrave, for one, is wonderful in this picture. And to have as her suitors is the kind of footloose and fancy-free Alan Bates, who personifies swinging London.
Yes.
And her other suitor, which is the dour and conservative James Mason.
Yes.
With just Mason always with that proper touch of perversity to him that makes, even when he's prim and proper, you know there's something a little nutted up about him, so to speak. So you could see him being with marrying Lynn Redgrave. What a wonderful movie. What a wonderful artifact from that time period. And this is, what a gas.
From 1966, that's Georgie Girl. And again, in that, it's not a far stretch from, well, I mean, maybe saying from Hard Day's Night, it's a stretch. But still, we're talking about the same genre. Swinging London, it's black and white, and it's kind of a free-for-all and, free-spirited ideas. Check it out. Bob, we jumped ahead, though. We should talk about a major film that Alan Bates starred in 2 years earlier, and that is from 1964, along with Anthony Quinn, Zorba the Greek.
Huge film.
And when you talk about the different roles of Alan Bates, he's, swinging London in Georgie Girl, but a couple of years earlier, he's the, what would you call him in Zorba the Greek? Sort of the quiet, conservative person who is just sort of aghast at the rambunctious and in love with life Zorba,
As portrayed by a man who loved life with an unbridled passion. Of course, we're talking about Anthony Quinn.
Yes. But Alan Bates sort of grounding us all, because he's sort of looking at astonishment at this guy who is so filled with life and a different culture, and he's Alan Bates is our anchor to follow Anthony Quinn in this film. So there's, it's funny, I didn't remember Alan Bates so much in Zorba the Greek, of course, as opposed to the flamboyant Anthony Quinn, but there he was, and
giving the picture a foundation. Quinn's performance is so larger than life. Something was required to kind of create a balance, and Alan Bates provided it brilliantly in that film.
Yes. It was in 1966, our opening in the program tonight, from King of Hearts, one of the true cult classics. It played in theaters in the 60s and 70s endlessly, with its very interesting anti-war theme, the fact that the French are very eccentric, but they love being eccentric. We'll talk about that later in the show. I think we're going to talk about a number of his films. We'll swing back around and talk a little bit about King of Hearts, perhaps the one film that you remember Alan Bates in most, or maybe I'm not being fair here.
I would say as a movie-going resident of the Central Coast that through The Rainbow and The Palm, I remember at the Rainbow, King of Hearts played there quite a bit. In fact, that was on the twin bill. The last night, closing night was King of Hearts and Harold and Maude.
Yep.
And
place was packed.
And it seems to be, at least in the Central Coast area, King of Hearts is the most readily recognizable Alan Bates film. And I think we can thank this gentleman sitting here with me tonight for that, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I hope our listeners, those who did see it, enjoyed it. It is a great film. In fact, we'll return to that as I mentioned, Bob. But, boy, it's a French pastry of a film. It's a fluffy, wonderful film. But, boy, it's real timely. And I watched it again. I've seen it so many times. And it still holds up. It's delightful and poignant at the same time. About the same time, or right after he did King of Hearts, Alan Bates teamed up with the great John Schlesinger in 1967 with Julie Christie and Terence Stamp in Far from the Madding Crowd.
What a great film. I think we talked about this a bit during our John Schlesinger tribute. A film really underrated. It kind of got lost in between, Dr. Zhivago and whatnot, and it's a beautiful film, just beautiful to look at, and Bates is just incredible in this. I mean, here's Julie Christie, this young gal. She's seeking love in these, in this strange time. Well, it's like early 19th century England. If you've ever seen Wuthering Heights, you know what I'm talking about. And he's a shepherd, a simple man, a man of the earth, very earthy cat in this film, juxtaposed against Terence Stamp's kind of rigid but very attractive and appealing cavalry officer. And here's Julie Christie thinking that, the swashbuckling cavalryman, Terence Stamp, it's all the possibilities of that great world out there, and Bates personifies everything about where she lives, a man of the earth, and just very speaking plain. And again, the power of Bates' presence. He's covered in mud half the time. He's been out where, and you juxtapose him against Terence Stamp, who's cold. We love Terence Stamp,
yes.
A contemporary of Bates, and he's in that impeccable uniform with those steely eyes, and you're rooting for Bates. You can't. How could you not?
Here's a clip from John Schlesinger's great film from 1967, Far from the Madding Crowd. It's the joisting of Julie Christie and Alan Bates.
Well, what did they say?
That Farmer Bolwood's name and your own were likely to be flung over pulpit together before the year was out.
Oh, that's absolute nonsense. There's not a word of truth in it. And I want you to tell them so, Gabriel.
Well, now, Bathsheba.
Miss Everdeen, you mean?
I mean this, Miss Everdeen, I mean this. If Mr. Bolwood really spoke to you of marriage, I am not going to put it about that he didn't just to please you. I already tried to please you too much for my own good.
I only want you to tell them that I'm not going to marry him. Not that there'd be any shame in it if I were. However, I'm not, and I'd be glad if you tell them so.
I can say that to them if you wish, Miss Everdeen. Likewise, I could give an opinion to you on what you've done.
I dare say you can, but I don't want your opinion. Well, what is your opinion?
That it's unworthy. I'm sorry if that sounds like a reprimand.
Oh, no, not at all. As far as I'm concerned, a reprimand from you is the same as a compliment from anyone of real judgment.
That's Alan Bates and Julie Christie from the 1967 film Far from the Madding Crowd. And as you mentioned, Bob, when it first came out, it wasn't really too well regarded, but since the film, it's aged very well, and it's become kind of a cult classic as well. One of those gems that was ignored when it was first released.
Yeah, as often is the case. You find films that you like that were older, and it just seems a constant thing that they didn't do well when they were released. Maybe a little ahead of its time.
Oh, I would say so. Not too long after Far From the Madding Crowd, let's just see, there was a TV film he made called Spoiled, 1968. The Fixer in 1968 as well. And then a pivotal film was rather groundbreaking in its frank sexuality. It was the Ken Russell interpretation of D.H. Lawrence's Women in Love. Folks, this is a very provocative film. What a cast. You've got Glenda Jackson, who I really miss. I mean, the Glenda Jackson...
What is she doing these days, Jimmy?
I think she's politically involved. I've heard her name involved in British politics, and she's out there, you know, the activist that I would believe she would be. But boy, she was just... what
a marvelous actress.
We talked about Katharine Hepburn, you know, last year, and Glenda Jackson reminds me of a woman with the fire that's equal to Katharine Hepburn. She was in a lot of great films and just had such what a great actress she is. But it was in 1969, Women in Love, with probably the most provocative scene in this was the wrestling scene between Alan Bates and Oliver Reed, naked. And we really need to go back to 1969. I mean, this was very provocative stuff. I mean, when you think this was also the time of Midnight Cowboy coming out in this country, where cinema was really pushing the envelope. But folks, I can tell you, if you want to see an erotic film, check out Women in Love with Alan Bates, Oliver Reed. Some of the descriptions that they have of, for instance, at a dinner, Alan Bates talks about the proper way to eat a fig. And folks, it's erotic, and it really pushes even, shall we say, the literary eroticism that you would not find in any cinema today.
And Jimmy, thinking back to the nude wrestling scene between Oliver Reed and Alan Bates, they were both pretty scared about doing this.
I would imagine.
They were both mad, to be sure, especially Oliver Reed, a total maniac. However, they're still Englishmen, and their embarrassment, which would mean their privates, would be shown. They were kind of very nervous about that and coming in contact with each other's private parts.
Mm-hmm.
I know Oliver Reed probably handled it by getting very drunk. I would tend to think that's what he did. But Alan Bates, on the other hand, being the pro, he just kind of kept it together. And, I mean, it's Ken Russell, so it's nuts. And what a fascinating film.
It is a fascinating
What a fascinating time in film. And there's Bates right there.
Bob, I'm so glad I can always rely on you to know what was going on behind the scenes in these things. In addition to the eroticism in Women in Love, there's some very wonderful, frank talk about just basic relationships with women, with life, with your work. Here's just a sort of a quiet conversation between Alan Bates and Oliver Reed in Women in Love, just talking about what is the meaning of love, what is your desire for love in life and life itself. This from Women in Love.
Have you ever really loved anybody?
Yes and no.
But not finally?
Finally, no.
Nor I.
Do you want to?
I don't know.
I do. I want the finality of love.
Just one woman.
Just one woman.
I don't believe a woman, and nothing but a woman, will ever make my life.
You don't? Then what do you live for, Gerald?
I suppose I live for my work. And other than that, I live because I'm living.
I find that one needs one single pure activity. I would call love a single pure activity. But I don't really love anybody. Not now.
You mean that if there isn't a woman, Then there's nothing.
More or less there. Seeing there's no God.
Rupert, what is it you really want?
I want to sit with my beloved in a field with daisies growing all around us.
That's Alan Bates and Oliver Reed talking in Ken Russell's film adaptation of D.H. Lawrence's Women in Love. And Bob, you know, I was watching that scene, and I guess I just like that frank talk. Here's two men. Of course, the women talk in this film, too, very open and frankly. But when you just look at each other, you go, you know, what do you want out of life? What are you living for? You know, what is love to you? I mean, just that frank talk. I was wrapped into it today when I was watching it.
Oh, what a great film. I mean, there's just, but again, it's like Bates, he's, you know, in terms of sexuality on the screen, this man was supercharged.
Yes.
And he didn't necessarily have to be waving his arms around or screaming to do it. He'd be very frank, and his presence was so powerful, and the way he's just very economical in his use of language, and he speaks, I mean, his voice is beautiful, as are most of the really great British actors. He knows how to use the language. And, I mean, you think about him, he did a film a few years before this. It was called A Kind of Loving, where he played some, I don't know what it was, an architect or something, and he gets this woman pregnant and he has to marry her. And again, it's got that power. But it's all, a lot of times he's just standing there quietly biting his tongue, but you just see this volcano of supercharged feelings there. And that's the genius of Alan Bates. You can't teach somebody that. That's a gift that he had from the minute he started acting. That's what sets him apart and makes him very special.
Can't agree more. You're listening to the movie program on Public Radio, KCBX, San Luis Obispo, KSBX, Santa Barbara. Bob and I are going to take a jaunt over the concession stand, fill up our popcorns and drinks. We will continue our discussion of the great Alan Bates in just a moment.
I want to go to the movie show, me and my baby. Come on, let's go. On to the movie show. Let's go. I buy the popcorn as soon as we hit the door. My two brothers, Bill and Pons, sitting in the front row. They bought the candy. We don't need nothing more. I love a movie show, I tell you, in black and white. I don't care what it is. I don't care how small the theater is. I don't care who's playing. I don't care as long as they got popcorn and candy bars. Butterfly McQueen, she's gone with the wind.
We're back on the movie program, Take Two on Public Radio KCBX, and we're talking about Alan Bates. We lost him a couple of weeks ago, talking about his extraordinary career. And moving right along, it was in 1978, under the direction of Paul Mazursky, that Alan Bates, probably, maybe beyond King of Hearts, was most visible to American viewers. And
this film is this is a really great little movie.
An Unmarried Woman.
That's what we're talking about, starring Jill Clayburgh. Whatever happened to her? She was a fine actress. I'd like to know. But she portrays a woman in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, whose husband leaves her. And suddenly, for the first time, maybe ever in her life, she's alone. And what a terrifying experience that is for her. But somewhere along the way, she starts to get strength and develop self-confidence. and she comes across this powerhouse of a man who exudes sexuality and he's the polar opposite of the drip she was married to, and he's an embodiment of freedom, and it's Alan Bates. And I can tell you, Jim, my sister's a big Alan Bates fan, and in fact, she saw him on Broadway, I think, a year or two ago in a play, and was quite taken by just how great he was. But I think for American audiences, especially our female moviegoers, really noticed Bates with this film. I mean, here he is. He was probably close to 40, maybe a little over 40 when he made this, and he, for a short period of time, was quite the heartthrob. I'm sure he thought it was as funny as we probably would right now, but he was. He was considered very, very attractive by female moviegoers, and that led to parts like The Rose with Barbra Streisand.
Yes, that's right.
And, I mean, Bates, the heartthrob.
Yeah, it was just the next year, 1979, that Alan Bates starred in The Rose. We're going to talk about another film from 1978, but Nijinsky in 1980, and then I guess with Robert Altman and is it Quartet, or was that the same Robert Altman? I'm thinking of Quintet.
Right, it's get confused.
Alan Bates in a film called Quartet in 1981. I'm going to go back, though, to 1978, right after An Unmarried Woman, actually around the same year, playing the very sexy Saul in Unmarried Woman, moved on to play a fellow named Crossley in a film called The Shout. And, folks, if you're looking for that really kind of odd, esoteric film, I highly recommend The Shout.
And this, Jim, is probably Bates's token horror film.
But unlike any other horror film you would think, it has a very young John Hurt, who looks almost like, a member of the Sex Pistols. He's real young, and he experiments with sound and everything. And Alan Bates is this guy who infiltrates his life of John Hurt and his wife, and he's capable of a shout that breaks eardrums, and it's just a very odd character study of these people. Oddly enough, the way the film begins is at a cricket match, and if you can believe this, the scorekeepers are Alan Bates and Tim Curry. You might know him as Dr. Frank N. Footer from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And the most odd situation here, that you're at a cricket match to set up this rather strange movie. So here we go. Here's the opening of The Shout. It is Alan Bates, Tim Curry. They're watching a cricket match, keeping score. Alan Bates notices John Hurt and is going to proceed to tell a story to Tim Curry. This is from The Shout.
There you are. Sorry, did you say something?
That man had a wife who loved him. A rare phenomenon, wouldn't you say?
Had? Well, what happened to her?
He lost her. I could tell you the rest of the story if you like. Do you think you can listen and score at the same time?
I'm sure I can.
We could make things easier for ourselves. You could keep both scores, and I could tell the story, and at the fall of each wicket, I could copy down what you've written.
We're very well organized, Mr. Crossley.
Every word of what I'm going to tell you is true. Only I'm telling it in a different way. It's always the same story. It's always the same story, but I change the sequence of events, and I vary the climaxes a little because I like to keep it alive. You see, I like to keep it alive.
There's Alan Bates drawing you into the movie called The Shout, and There it is, Bob. It's that sort of cool, calm, and collected Englishman, Sir Alan Bates, but he's got that menace. He's got the sort of percolating power underneath this very cool and calm exterior. And folks, it's an odd one, but if you enjoy finding films that are unique, check out The Shout with Alan Bates, John Hurt, and Tim Curry. And let's look at some of his other films. He did make The Shout right after An Unmarried Woman, and he continued to work all through, in fact, up until his death. There's a film coming out at the end of the month with Michael Caine called The Statement, and perhaps you saw him in Robert Altman's Gosford Park.
He was also in The Mothman Prophecies.
Yeah,
with Richard Gere. He was like the nutty old guy
That's right.
Gere. It's kind of like David Hemmings in that other movie where we were talking about, was it Last Order? You don't recognize him. In this one, I'm going, who is this guy? It was Bates.
It was Alan Bates. That was not a great film, but it had its creepy moments.
He had a great part in it. I mean, as the consummate professional, that film disappointed me a great deal. I really thought that had potential to be something really good, and it didn't quite deliver the goods. But Bates definitely, he held up his end of the bargain.
Let's in 19. I guess I thought it was 1994. It's 1990. Alan Bates starred as Claudius in Hamlet. This was the version filmed by Franco Zeffirelli, who made the great version of Romeo and Juliet back in 1968. And, Mel Gibson as Hamlet. I think it's a pretty great version. It's also nice to see some Shakespeare with and without Kenneth Branagh, who seems to be on the forefront of keeping Shakespeare on the screen. But who is the presence? Who is Claudius? The presence in Hamlet, Alan Bates, and he's great. He's doing many of these films, such as we go from The Shout, which is, as you mentioned, is a horror film, to Shakespeare. Here's the spectrum of Alan Bates.
Unbelievable. Amazing.
Here's a scene from the 1990 version of Hamlet, directed by Franco Zeffirelli. This is with Glenn Close, Mel Gibson, and Alan Bates.
Hamlet? Hamlet?
No, my cousin Hamlet. And my son.
A little more than kin and less than kind.
How is it that the clouds still hang on you?
Not so, my lord. I am too much in the sun.
'Tis sweet and commendable in your nature, Hamlet, to give these morning duties to your father. But you must know, your father lost a father. That father lost his. But to persever in obstinate condolement is a course of impious stubbornness. 'Tis unmanly grief. It shows a will most incorrect to heaven. For your intent in going back to school in Wittenberg, it is most retrograde to our desire. Be as ourself in Denmark, our chiefest courtier, cousin, and our son.
From the Franco Zeffirelli version of Hamlet, that is Mel Gibson, Alan Bates, and Glenn Close. And there's Alan Bates, as comfortable as ever amidst Shakespeare. And
great film, great adaptation.
Yeah, it's a really entertaining one. I think I think there was an apprehension about Mel Gibson doing Shakespeare. I thought he pulled it off, and the film is entertaining and perhaps a good introduction to Shakespeare. Alan Bates, great as Claudius.
Franco Zeffirelli, again, scoring, with Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet. Yeah, he gets it.
You're listening to Take Two, the movie program on Public Radio KCBX. We're talking about Alan Bates. And just one more swing back to probably the most seen film, the cult classic from 1966-67 called King of Hearts. And, I just want to revisit this because, Bob, when I was watching this film again, I would love our listeners to check this out. It's been a while since they've seen it. It's available on DVD. Looks fabulous. And I remember it so well, but maybe watching it in 2003, 2004, it is so timely. It's very charming, keeps its very light feel, but still the subject of war. In this case, interestingly, France not wanting anything to do with it. This takes place in World War I, by the way, and Alan Bates says the very shy and awkward private plum pick who is going into the town to disarm a bomb, and the inmates in the insane asylum have taken over the town. That's the plot. It's charming, it's wonderful, and it's very funny. I think you would get a kick out of it. In fact, our last clip tonight comes from King of Hearts, when the King of Hearts is Alan Bates. Unbeknownst to him, he was crowned the King of Hearts. And as there's a coronation going on in the middle of the town, the Germans show up. And, of course, what happens with these inhabitants in the town is the Germans coming through the town become a parade. There you have it, Bob. It's the Germans come in, hey, they throw confetti, and it becomes a parade. So, and Alan Bates in this, he is, like I mentioned, shy, but he also gets into it at some point. He's not just this, straight and narrow guy trying to save this town. There's a point where he just kind of gives in to the craziness of the war that's going around him, and, actually falls in love with Geneviève Bujold, who is the acrobat. And everyone's excited that the king is going to marry the acrobat. So check it out, folks. It's the pièce de résistance for Alan Bates viewing, in addition to all the other films that we mentioned on tonight's program. And if you look up his filmography, there's a superb career that stretches the entire spectrum.
There's tons of movies we didn't even mention, like The Go-Between from 1971. Directed by Joseph Losey. John Frankenheimer's The Fixer, based on the Bernard Melman book, with the equally great Dirk Bogarde. I mean, it's just his career is so rich, and he's left us with so many great films to watch over and over again. He may be gone, but his artistry lives on.
Time for you to call us. It's 549-8855, 1-800-549-8855. Take Two, the movie program. Let us know if you have a favorite Alan Bates performance or film. We're sure you do. Let us know what you think. And, you told me about him passing away, Bob, and I didn't even see it in the paper, and it was just, I went, because David Hemmings recently, and
John Schlesinger, and Richard Harris not too long ago. It's like this is like one of my favorite, and our favorite areas of film, and they're all starting to pass away, and it's just painful.
Yeah. Tell us where you're calling from and your name. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Hi, this is Rick calling from San Luis Obispo.
Hi, Rick.
Hi. My vote is for the King of Hearts. Unfortunately, I didn't see many of these other films, so it's not so much a preference over the others. But I lived in Aspen at the time King of Hearts was, showing annually or even twice a year at the local theater. And the thing that really got me, and I think most of the people of my generation who were in the process of rebelling against the established order, the dictatorial, repressionist, anti-feeling anti-intellectual regime, that was dominated America at the time. The Richard Nixon thing, all that, the Vietnam War, all that stuff that was going on. So it was kind of like a clever vignette of what was happening in the United States at the time. And I don't know if that was the intent at all of the people who put the film together, but it really spoke to the life and the feelings of humanity versus the sterile domination of the dictatorial system.
Well put.
I agree.
And I think, Rick, that's why when they made this film, being it was a European production, World War I, metaphorically speaking, is a great vehicle to express these kind of feelings. I mean, you can think about this film, All Quiet on the Western Front, Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory. I'm just to name but a few. World War I is a very loamy field to till to get to hit on the emotions and the feelings you've touched upon so eloquently here.
Well, you folks are the eloquent ones, the Siskel Ebert of the Central Coast.
Well, we appreciate your call, Rick.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for calling. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Hello. I don't know if I'm on.
Yes, you are.
How about that? I'm calling from Atascadero, and I'm thinking that he was in a movie in the 60s in which he played, it was a doctor movie having to be a veterinarian, and it was something about the push me, pull you characters. Was he? I can't think of the name of the movie, but it was really cute.
Boy, we've got a list of his films, and I'm...
Well, now, Dr. Dolittle.
Dr. Dolittle.
But that's Rex Harrison.
Wasn't he in it, too?
Not that I was aware of.
Oh, I keep thinking he was in it.
It's been a long time since I've seen that film. It's
Yeah.
quite possible.
He wasn't the veterinarian. He was like the assistant, I think.
No,
Maybe not.
Unfortunately, he wasn't in that. Though,
Well,
I'll tell you, I just saw a ghost, and I'll diverse just a little bit. Saw a Ghost in Mrs. Muir the other night.
Oh, that
from
was
1947. Wonderful. Rex Harrison, what a wonderful actor.
Yes.
Big fan of his.
Me
Very
too.
classy. A great loss.
Oh, yes, very much. I love The King of Hearts.
Oh, yes.
It's marvelous.
It is.
Yeah.
There's a film here from 1963 that Alan Bates was in called The Caretaker. Does that ring any bells? Because I haven't seen it, but I mean, that's on the list here.
I'm not sure if I've seen that.
No. Well...
Terrific actor.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you for your call.
Thanks. Bye.
Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, I'm glad you brought up the name. It might be inappropriate to call in about the movie, but I was fortunate enough to be in London and saw him do The Caretaker, and it was one of the great pieces of theater. I'm an old fart. Been kind of going to the theater for a long time, and I don't know if you saw the film The Caretaker.
No.
So basically, he's in the play as a monologue because his wife is in a coma, and there's some interaction between himself and the orderly that comes in or the nurse. But basically, he's talking to his wife, and I can't remember who played his wife, whether in fact his previously deceased wife played that part or not. All I remember is going to see him, and it was just magic.
Boy.
Especially, with somebody who is there on the stage by himself, not doing James Whitmore doing Truman or Hal, whatever his name is.
Hal Holbrook?
Holbrook doing
Mark Twain.
But this was his wife was in bed. It was a hospital scene, and it was he was talking to her.
Well, my sister used the same word to describe Alan Bates's presence on stage that you just did. Magic. I mean, this man on stage was absolutely amazing, so I've been told. And I regret not seeing him on stage.
Well, it reminds me, I'm inside of County building. Anyway, I'm walking outside, so I'm not echoing. If you saw Hugh Kernan and Jessica Tandy in The Petition, where only the two of them on stage. Again,
wow.
There is maybe, I don't know how I picked the word magic, but it doesn't happen very often.
That is
Thank
true.
you for your great show.
Thank you for calling.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Hi, guys. Is it me?
It is you.
Okay, Linda in Orcutt.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Hey. Great show. Wonderful, wonderful glimpses. Thank you very much. But I think you've opened another genre of discussion.
Oh, good.
British films of the 60s and the early 70s.
Oh, yeah. We were just
I
talking
think there's
about
a whole
that.
treasure trove there.
I think so.
Worth a two-part show.
I think so. Well, I mean, just in the process of talking about Alan Bates, it's like, here's one film, his first film's with Laurence Olivier, and it's also Albert Finney's first film.
Exactly.
Dirk Bogart's name's been brought up. Mel
Bogart.
Gibson. I mean, there's all kinds of Terrence Stamp, Julie Christie, Glenda Jackson, Oliver Reed, Richard Harris have all been mentioned. I mean, the vein is so rich.
Well, thanks for our topic for our next show.
Okay, great.
I think it's
Thank
a
you.
slam dunk, Linda.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We have time for just a couple more quick calls. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Hello, this is Jerry of Oceano.
Hi, Jerry.
Hey, there was my favorite Alan Bates. Is probably one you haven't run across. It's called Travels with Aristotle, and I believe it was like a British miniseries on BBC.
Wow.
Haven't seen it. Tell us about it real quick.
He's a professor, and he was made redundant, which means he was fired.
Right.
And he's got this idea that he's going to spend the rest of his life looking for Aristotle, who writes crossword puzzles. And he just kind of goes off, and he's very eccentric, and he kind of somehow he finds Aristotle to be missing, and so he goes to report it as a missing person, and everybody thinks he's a total crackpot. But this one female cop is assigned to go with him to investigate it, and it actually turns out to be a murder mystery, and it really is involved. And I never got a chance to see all of it, and it's driving me crazy trying to find it. But it's fascinating because it's sort of like They Might Be Giants, the whole idea of a crackpot who turns out to be real, who turns out to be correct.
No,
I love it.
Wow.
So give us the title one more time.
It's called Travels with Aristotle.
Okay, let's look for that, Bob.
Wow, it sounds like just another one of the many things he did for British television.
Yes.
I think I had mentioned earlier about An Englishman Abroad, which I absolutely love. But there's a whole wealth of things he did that we probably haven't seen in this country.
Well, I believe this was towards the end of his life because he was, old and heavy and grizzled and absolutely fascinating, just completely fascinating.
It was Jerry, right?
Yes, this is Jerry.
Jerry, thank you for your call.
All right, talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We have time for one more call very briefly, about 30 seconds. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Hi. Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, this is Dwayne from Coyote.
How you, Dwayne?
Good. I met Alan Bates in 1971 in London.
Oh, wow.
I saw 11 plays in 9 days while I was there.
Oh.
And in London theater, it's best in the world.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that was doing a play called Getting On, and he got me a ticket to see Alan Bates in Butley, which was playing there at that time. And he says, "Do you want to meet him afterwards?" And I said, yeah, sure. And so we went out to a pub.
Oh, fabulous.
And so I met, we were together that evening, and I told him how much I liked Women in Love. I'd seen it, and he said, "What do you think of Oliver?" And I said, I thought he was the weakest link in the movie, and I do, And he said, "Well, we had some problems with Oliver." I remember that conversation. And the first time I had ever tried the thick Guinness, British Guinness,
right?
And he saw that I was having trouble with it, and he says, "You don't have to finish that." One of his movies that you haven't mentioned is the David Story in Celebration. It was part of a series, and I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, but
unfortunately, we're not. And you know what, my friend? Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Really appreciate you sharing that, the Alan Bates story. In fact, maybe when we talk about British film again in the future, call us up again and tell us more details of hanging out at the pub with Alan Bates.
Yeah, I wish you were the first caller. That way we could have more time to hear about this. But exactly, call us back with that one again. We got to hear that story.
Yeah, great show, you guys. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for your call. Well, Bob, what a great actor. Thank you for listening. We have the best listeners in the world. Hank, thanks for playing the clips. And Bob?
Everybody, thanks so much. It's been a great show. And have a great week. Hang loose, stay cool, and catch us again next Monday.